This talk explores how the Disney Corporation creates experiences for its consumers with a focus on EPCOT's World Showcase. Additionally, how the conglomerate benefits from created experiences through the phenomenon of experience economics. This practice recognizes that tourists can more easily associate and identify and enjoy the Disney experience if they are well-versed Disney consumers. The emotional environment, which draws from past exposure and experiences, is the connecting mechanism that links the consumer to Disney World's aesthetic-oriented hyper-reality. Moreover, music is used to both draw from the emotional environment and establish new conscious and subconscious connections in the artificial landscape. I posit that the aesthetic arrangement of countries and associated musical presentations at the World Showcase becomes the tourist's lived reality in which Disney's meticulous messages about the world and its associated cultures become undoubtedly validated and authenticated in the tourist's subconscious. Disney's legacy. The influence of Walt Disney's work has steadily grown since his death 47 years ago. The 1930s through the 1960s found Americans in search of hope and sanctuary during difficult times of depression, war, and turmoil. Disney was able to provide magnetic appeal through his remarkable artistry, creative animations, and feature films, and through idealistic and romantic narratives. As an extension of that magic that is Disney, the Disneyland theme park in California captured the hearts of Americans beginning in 1955. Walt Disney's later years were dedicated to his biggest project to date, the Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow, or EPCOT. This utopian city was to be built on newly purchased and highly isolated swampland in Orlando, Florida. Disney imagined EPCOT to be a city of ingenuity and perpetual technological innovation through important contributions from American corporations. The city would contain 20,000 residents with a central climate-controlled consumer metropolis for residents and foreigners alike. Although the EPCOT of today is not exactly this utopian city that Disney had hoped for, since the company assumed it involved too much legal responsibility, it does draw many similarities from the ideas of a controlled, consumption-based metropolis. So now I'll speak a little bit about the World Showcase. Today in EPCOT, tourists are able to experience the best of two worlds, Future World and the World Showcase. Although I won't discuss Future World in detail today, it is equally important contextually. The EPCOT theme park experience is intended as an educational experience for its visitors. Millions of Americans and international tourists have visited since the park's opening in 1982. In Future World, park attendants learn about human technological achievements and breakthroughs, alternative agricultural systems, outer space, mechanics, and society's energy demand through interactive attractions. The World Showcase alternatively serves as the Arts and Humanities Department of EPCOT. There, excited tourists can tour the world in just one day or even one morning. The 11 pavilions of the showcase, Mexico, Norway, China, Germany, Italy, America, Japan, Morocco, France, the United Kingdom, and Canada, surround a large, centrally located man-made lagoon. For families who may not have the economic means to travel the world, Disney's World Showcase may actually be the closest and most viable option. At the Mexican Pavilion, one can observe a large Mayan temple and hear a mariachi band play traditional folk music from Mexico. Norway features a recreation of an 11th century stave church, and Japan features a 5-story pagoda and taiko drum performances. In China, we can meet Mulan and observe historical artifacts from the Han Dynasty period. One can stop by France to eat a pastry and take a look at the Eiffel Tower, or instead, shop around at a bustling Moroccan bazaar. The possibilities are endless. Anthropologists, ethnomusicologists, and other cultural researchers could have a field day with countless instances of fine, detailed artistry at every pavilion. The beauty of the showcase is that tourists are able to walk on by one country to get to another. Not interested in the culture of Japan? No worries, the American adventure is just down the road. From experience, the showcase is analogous to a market or fair with a variety and range of kiosks and locales trying to grab your attention and pull you in. This layout or market-oriented design was literally inspired by a market-oriented fair, the World's Fair. World's Fair connections. Disney's EPCOT Center often draws comparisons to the World's Fair, an international exposition with a global focus that takes place in different cities around the world every few years, even going so far as to be called a permanent World's Fair itself. The 1939 World's Fair in Flushing Meadows, New York, featured attractions that Disney later became famously known for: amusement parks and rides, stage-set representations of vernacular architecture, state-of-the-art technology, and a special construction of an ideal urban community. Disney World is also similar to the World's Fair in that they share commercial ventures by corporate sponsors, a staging of culture on display, a blend of progress and consumerism in selling corporate image, and the landscape of a new, enjoyable, and controlled fantasy world. The 1964 New York World's Fair featured a familiar icon for Disney travelers, a Unisphere. This 12-story stainless steel globe was used as the iconic centerpiece that represented the fair's theme, Peace Through Understanding. Epcot's World Showcase hosts a similar Unisphere during its nighttime show, Illumination Reflections on Earth. Heavy on the senses of sight and sound, the show contains an instrumental musical number played on the park's sound system, as well as lasers, fireworks, flames, and fountains. Images of people and places play on large screens over the continents of the globe. Market mechanisms and economic incentives. On the surface, Disney promotes creativity, fantasy, happiness, and community. Yet, in reality, accumulation will always be at the top of the priority list. Janet Wasco, a communications professor at the University of Oregon and researcher of the Disney Corporation, addresses the concept of synergy, one of Disney's main modes of market operation, explaining that this process occurs when a company cross-promotes their activities through many different outlets. Cross-promotional strategies have been used by the Disney Corporation across the board, especially through its own ABC network. Characters and motion pictures ultimately become the center of an infinite array of interlocking marketing schemes. With the expansion of new technologies and advertising platforms, the possibilities for synergy have greatly increased. The Disney Corporation utilizes opportunities to link with other corporations to feature promotional tie-ins in which more and more products take on Disney themes. Disney executives acknowledge this, explaining that, quote, "We, Disney, actually have people in every division that are responsible for the synergy relationship of the company, and every division has that. We take it very seriously." The tentacles of the Disney market extend far and wide, and corporate hopes to successfully reach its most valued audience, children. Another important market mechanism that Disney utilizes on a large scale is experience economics. It is culturally evident that there exists a high economic value of a consumer's Disneyfied past. Experience economics both creates and feeds off of the Disneyfied past, or collective memories extractable from past experiences. Disneyland and the expansion of theme parks added another dimension to this experience economy, in which the Disney Corporation largely benefited. Experiences made at a Disney World theme park join an individual's collection of extractable collective memories that Disney can then use to link his or her nostalgic emotional past to new ventures. In doing so, the wheels of the fantasy for profit wagon keep on turning generation after generation. The Disney Cradle. Understanding the connections between an individual and their environment is a difficult task. It is equally as complex to understand the connections between a consumer and a World Showcase. And to aid in this understanding, I drafted a relationship diagram that displays connections between various features. This model has helped me wrap my head around the concept of experience economics, the phenomenon that Walt Disney made famous. If we are investigating a cause, or what it is about artificial environments and experience economics that aids in the preservation of power and control, then the most revealing thing to study is the effect on the consumer. We should observe Disney's creations in the context of emotional results, such as optimism, contentment, excitement, and happiness, in order to comprehend how they affect our emotional and rational motivations. Emotional environment. The expression emotional environment is defined and explained by Joseph Chitry, a professor of critical studies at the California College of the Arts. In this context, the term environment has historical roots in the foundation of Disney's filmmaking conglomerate, Hollywood. Our emotional experiences and reactions to Disney's productions are distantly related to their location and circumstances of creation to an extent. As Disney's name and enterprise grew, environment took on a new form. The expansion of theme parks made emotional experiences more complex, in which consumers became free to interact in new virtual realities that anthropomorphized film experiences. Through the creation of emotional environments, the amalgamation of a tourist's past emotional connections with Disney is able to be exploited through the experience economics consumer strategy. A consumer's past lived experiences enables a nostalgic identification with new people, places, and things. Emotional environment therefore refers to the total mixture of past emotional experiences related to everything and anything Disney. Hyperreality. I borrow the postmodern philosophical term hyperreality from Houston and Miamber's analysis on aesthetics and authenticity at the World Showcase. The concept of hyperreality is becoming more popularly discussed due to the acceleration of the current technological age and the accelerated production of immersive, controlled consumer environments. One can think of Disney's World Showcase as a virtual reality, or a tour within a tour, or the second layer of the dream world. While walking through the countries of the showcase, it may be easy to feel overwhelmed by a bombardment of cultural presentations in which your only connection to that presentation is consumption, or even overwhelmed by the planner's close attention to detail. Each pavilion is a reflection of Disney's view of the most authentic cultural reality that consumers can connect to. As a tourist in the World Showcase, two types of experience are at action, a direct experience and an indirect experience. It is useful to think of the emotional environment as a vault that draws from past experiences when connections are being made with reality/hyperreality in real time. In the model that you have on your handouts, connections are shown as arrows between the consumer and the presented hyperreality. Direct experiences at the World Showcase are conscious. They include our physical connections with the artificial environment, what we buy, what we eat, what we hear, and what we feel. Indirect experiences, however, are subconscious in that they create bonds and memories in ways that we may not necessarily be aware of. An indirect experience at the World Showcase is what we take in but don't consciously realize, such as cultural stereotyping or the effects of piped-in music. These unseen yet experienced elements of the hyperreality are also being added to our bank of past experiences. For example, we physically notice the constant cleanliness of the World Showcase. We directly feel and sense that there is no garbage around us, despite the ridiculous amounts of consumption and waste being generated. The indirect experience tells us that something else is going on here, but we pay no attention to it. Because we cannot see the process of the inconspicuous cleanup, our subconscious takes in the message that our actions of consumption are not affecting the environment. The cleanliness of the environment, on the other hand, is what contributes to the aesthetics of the hyperreality. One could argue that the cleanliness is just an element of the magic. The Disney enterprise is infamously known to work in subliminal ways, so it is not far-fetched to consider that many subconscious messages could really be intended. The limits of control are nearly endless in artificial environments such as the World Showcase. Perhaps this amount of thought and planning was what happened behind the Imagineering doors. Investigating the subconscious at the World Showcase. Discourse on authenticity, especially in tourism studies, suggests that all experience is authentic in itself. Seeking the exotic or the other through a vacation, for example, is one popular way to flee one's own mundane reality. Liminal experiences often occur without internal reflection and mindfulness. Hence, the quest for authentic experiences may actually blind us within our current realities. Through actively looking for authentic cultural representations at the World Showcase, an individual's attention is diverted from their unconscious consumption of the presented reality, which occurs through indirect experiences. Cultural stereotyping. As an artificial environment, the World Showcase contains the highest degree of precision in its presentation. Thus, the cultural representations at each pavilion are pre-selected to best represent each culture, ultimately leading to the perpetuation or creation of cultural stereotypes. Although stereotyping is a psychological necessity, some stereotypes perpetuate certain values that we ultimately consume as a truth. If we observe the China Pavilion, for example, we notice that the landscape is historically situated in Beijing with recreations of iconic architectural items, such as the Imperial Palace and Temple of Heaven of the Ming and Qing dynasties. I believe that the presentation at China is geared to cater to the eroticized and Orientalist Western gaze, a sentiment that many Americans are familiar with. Such presentations at the World Showcase legitimize and reinforce cultural outlooks that ensure the validity of the consumer's previous assumptions. English professor and folklorist Frank De Caro explicitly explains this phenomenon. Quote, World Showcase pavilions have been constructed through the reproduction of details which have a readily recognizable or easily grasped symbolic content, highly evocative of cultural wholes. End quote. What does this mean for the subconscious, and how is this process good for Disney? The World Showcase gets its magic from the striking differences between pavilions. Aesthetically appealing cultural differences aid in the fantasy element of Disney's basic strategy, the very carefully edited cultural forms, get subconsciously stored in the backdoor safe, which indirectly contributes to the emotional environment that Disney can exploit in the future. The power of music. The musical elements of the World Showcase heavily contribute to the overall Disney World tourist experience. Music is a critical feature that shapes, creates, and legitimizes artificial environments. Imagine walking through the visual reality of the World Showcase without music or the sound of buzzing tourists. It would be a scene straight from a nightmare or a bizarre horror film. The piped-in music or background music, inconspicuously played through the speakers and inanimate objects around the park, ensures that you have maintained your sanity and that you are also in Wonderland. Audible distinctions can be made between pavilions. Cultural music themes change to fit easily recognized musical styles. We realize we are in Morocco now that we vaguely hear a double harmonic or Arabian scale. The differentiation of background musical styles aids in our perceptions of same versus other, or even wild versus civilized. Music historian Charles Carson describes the spectacle of live music at Disney World, explaining that live performances, which include both street performances and stage performances, are special to guests as separate entities from the piped-in music. The dynamic between performers and the audience is, however, interesting to analyze. Because live performances' respective performers are commodified through the machinery of recording, playback, and amplification, guests react positively to the immediacy of the live performance and enjoy the authentic presentation. In conclusion, I am most certainly a victim of synergistic market mechanisms. As a high school marching band student in a community-oriented suburb of New Jersey, I realized that the Disney empire had muddled its way into the fabric of my social connections. My freshman year marching band show was themed on Disney music, with our first movement taken from the World Showcase spectacular Illuminations Reflections of Earth. Of course, I had no idea what that music was before playing it, but after a year of cooperative practice with my peers, it grew a sort of sentimental value, and now a nostalgic memory of the glory days of marching band. The pact between Disney and my emotional environment was finalized when I twice visited the World Showcase during my high school years. Seeing the show live with the very people I had performed it with was a magical experience in itself. Even so, was it the historicized and sanitized environment that finalized the emotional pact, or was it due to a combination of past Disney exposures and experiences? I believe that it was my Disneyfied past that established the emotional connection. The associated feelings of nostalgia and belonging are the very elements that Disney's synergistic market mechanisms seek to induce. As tourists and consumers, it may not be too difficult to make critical realizations about Disney's marketing and growth strategies. However, within the sonic and sanitized environment of the World Showcase, we, the consumers, are open books and able to be influenced consciously and subconsciously from both the artificial landscape and soundscape, from an abundance of stimuli that could never naturally exist in the outside world. That's it. Thank you. I would also like to thank my wonderful professor, Ms. Macy from Skidmore College, for supporting me through the writing and editing process and helping me in class last semester. And I would also like to acknowledge Skidmore College for supporting me to travel here through an opportunity grant.